All right, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of the Wives Club. We are so happy that you all are here. Thank you for joining us on a mid-week stream. We wanted to come to you all this week, and please allow me to introduce myself for anybody new here. I'm Maggie, and in 2021, I booked a session with the late, great Kevin Samuels. And it wasn't for me. I am aware and accept that I am average. But I wanted to create a community of like minded and marriage minded women within the privacy of his Patreon group. I always used to get convicted whenever what Kevin would say, where are the older women to teach the young? So I'm so grateful. Not only did Kevin give us his permission, he came up with the name, The Wives Club. So for the better part of going on 3 years now, these ladies and I would meet in his Patreon. We would use Kevin's shows as a lesson plan to talk about our action items, our lessons learned. We wanted to improve our outcomes and help the community. So it started with just me, and then AV joined us in the Wives Club. AV, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is AV. I am a future wife. I also, like Maggie, had an opportunity to meet with the late and great Kevin Samuels, who personally coached me on getting ready to be married and tighten up my marriage mindset. I'm super, super grateful for that. And this week is super special for us. That is why we're wearing white today, because we are approaching Kevin's 1 year anniversary. So this week we're thinking of him, we're celebrating him, and we are really, really excited to be back.
Absolutely. And then after AV joined us in the Wives Club, Lisa joined us in the Wives Club. Lisa, please introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. I am Lisa. I am a current wife, 17 years, and I am a big fan of Kevin's. Sad about this week, but I'm glad to be here to acknowledge his efforts and keep his spirit going with sharing with our community of like-minded women and men who want to see us all do better. So I'm here to provide that support and happy to be back.
Fantastic. And then after Lisa joined us in the Wives Club, Hermisha joined us. Hermisha, please introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Hermisha, and yes, it is a sobering, reflective time, especially this week. And as we remember Kevin and really just honor him by showing up, really, and giving back week after week. So happy to be here to represent as a former wife.
All right, so everybody sit back, relax, and thank you all again for being here and for being active in the chat. We have our agenda as per usual and a Kevin episode that we are going to refer to. Today's topic is the benefits of working for your man. So one of the terms that you're going to hear the wives say, former wife, current wife, future wife. And we use that terminology because I firmly believe whether you used to be married, whether you are married, or whether you want to be married, we should carry ourselves like wives because wives do move differently. So a little bit about me. I am a former wife of 10 years, married at 25, right after college. Have 2 sons from the marriage, but I admit I got caught up in that modern woman mindset. I thought I could do everything a man could do, 50-50 partnership. And I now know that that's not how it works. At least that's not how it works for me. So unfortunately, the marriage did end in divorce, but it's amicable and we co-parent really well. Since the divorce, I've been in another long-term relationship of 12 years with a 1% man, which means for me, I've had to do a lot of work to transition from that modern woman mindset to a traditional support system. So here we talk about what we got right and what we got wrong in hopes that it's helpful. All right. So the first point that we have here, if you all have a chance to watch the video, if you haven't, it is one of my absolute favorite Kevin Samuels videos. And even though he is gone, his message still lives on. And Kevin had a way of really making us think about things that, you know what, I never thought about it that way, especially those of us that really believed in our corporate careers and thought we were really changing the world, right? So the first point was how can working for your man benefit the family unit? So I'm going to give you all a little bit of story time as I do here as one of the older women in the community. I'm 47. I've been corporate since college. And, I was one of those that was really proud of my degrees, proud of my big job and the promotions and all of that. And what I now know that I didn't know then, all of those achievements are great for me. They're great in the moment. They're great for my family or anybody that would be proud of me. However, it's not as valuable to a man, or at least the type of man that we want, whether he's a high value, a Henry, a hit squad. Our achievements, especially over time, do not benefit men the way that we want them to benefit, or the way that we think they would benefit men. All right. So here's a little bit of story time for you all. I remember just kind of, dare I say, slaving away, like a lot of you all, ladies, if we're being really honest, how many of you all have that Sunday night dread or used to have that Sunday night dread? In this episode, Kevin talked about having a job that he hated that gave him like anxiety and depression and panic attacks. And, I'll tell you, I remember the excitement of corporate America, and it soon wore off after about 10 years. After about 10 years in the game, you've seen it all, the restructures, the new leadership, the mission statements, all of that. 20 years in, you are exhausted. So luckily for me, I got the reset that I needed in the pandemic. And I know a lot of people suffered, but it was really a wake-up call for me. We were all sent home for a couple weeks to, wait this thing out. And I thought, let's just let this thing pass by, and then I'll be back in the office, back in the boardroom, doing everything the way I did before, not knowing that the stress and the long commute, ripping and running, snapping at the kids, eating through the drive-through, everything that had just become my life to support that was taking away from my happiness and my health, and I didn't know. So I'm home during the pandemic, and I'm realizing I love it here. I'm so much happier now. I'm so much kinder now. I can slow down and be softer. A lot of those masculine ways about me that had just come on me after 20 years of corporate, I wasn't doing that anymore. And I remember my man, he talked to me and he was like, "Do you really want to go back into the office?" And I was just like, "Well, what do you mean? What do you mean?" There was a restructure at the office, and I was asked to interview for a director position, and I just knew because they came to me and asked me to apply. I just knew I was a shoo-in. And so I prepared and I interviewed and I gave it my best. And I didn't get the position. It came down to me and one other person that had more international experience. And I was crushed. Secretly, my man was thrilled. And I was kind of offended, y'all, if I'm being really honest. And that's when he said, "Do you really want to go back to all of that? Don't you like it at home better?" And for the first time, I really had to think about it. I am happier here, but I had been so programmed that that career that was gone just like that was really what was fulfilling me. And so I learned a very hard lesson then about what really matters in the long run. You couldn't tell me anything in my 20s. You couldn't tell me anything in my 30s. But ladies, especially young ladies, hear it from a 40-plus-year-old woman. You are going to want to prioritize relationships. So I'll stop there for now and give you all part 2 in our second lap. But AV, I'm going to come to you. What are your first thoughts about how working for your man can benefit the family?
Thank you, Maggie. And what great thoughts. What great thoughts. You always start us off strong. And I love these conversations. I think for me, it's really 3 things. The first being is your energy. So Maggie kind of touched on this a little bit, right? Like, when you are in these high powered jobs, or even if it's a job that you don't enjoy or that you do enjoy, it takes a lot of energy out of you, whether it's a 9 to 5 or you have non traditional hours. When you do come home, you're exhausted, right? So that energy definitely impacts the household. So I do think when you are working with your man lockstep, one of the first pieces of, or one of the first tips really is that your energy is going to be better, right? Because you're going to be working to accomplish goals with him under his leadership. So that's huge, right? You don't want to show up with depleted energy, because that impact, and especially if you have kids, that can impact the way you treat your kids, the way that you're treating other people around you, the way you show up for your family interactions and your friendships. That energy is super, super important. So we have to protect it. The second big thing is peace. You're going to be so much more peaceful if, with that benefit, being able to bring the peace at home. Because instead of coming home, opening the door like, oh my God, guess what my boss did today? There's going to be none of that. Because if you're working with your man, you're going to be able to kind of go through the day to day with him. Let's say he's a plumber, as an example. You're setting up his appointments for the following week. You're, kind of responding to emails for him. Men do not like to do this logistical stuff. They want to be able to wake up and do what they need to do for the next day. And if you are helping support his business, if he owns a business, or if you're supporting the home, then that's setting things up and organizing it for them so they don't have to do it, right? That creates a peaceful environment because it's not going to be chaotic. And it's definitely something that can help. And then lastly, I talked about the kids a little bit, but let's say he is a business owner. You're going to bring more money back into his pockets. Kevin had a moment in the stream that we've linked below where he's talked about that. But I think for us, we also realize that not every man is going to be a business owner. So, another part of this conversation later is we're going to talk about creative ways where you can still be a helpmate and kind of contribute to bringing that peace at home and working for your man in that way. So really, really excited to expand on the conversation. So Maggie, back over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, AV. Lisa, I'm coming to you. What can you share with us about how it benefits?
How it benefits the home? How it benefits the home for me is like, I never knew how much time it took me a long time to realize how much time I'm giving to a job, like that 40 hours or even, and I work overtime and stuff. So that all that time, and then I just have a little bit of time on the weekend to wash clothes or do housework stuff. And I'm like, when I was able to go home, and I went home just because I wasn't feeling well, but when I went home and I was like, wow, it's so much more peaceful here. And, being able to do laundry one day and clean bathrooms one day, and it's just that also helped my health as well because I'm not running around. So just being with the benefit of my home, I immediately saw that when I had to take a step back and not work. The other thing is I have time for and I see the importance of it now. I have time for my daughter in a way that I see how my mom, until my brother, who's the youngest, was 5 years old and starting kindergarten or school, how she had the time to, feed us in the morning. She would wake up at 6 a.m, get all her daughter's hair done and get us off to school and make sure we caught that bus or wherever we were going. And then while she was there with my brother, who was still young, they do whatever they do, shop or whatever. We come home and she'd have, not all the time, I know one memory I have all the time is my mom having cookies and stuff for us that she made, oatmeal cookies or something. And just stuff like that. And just the peace in the home, like we come home to a clean house and everything was ready. And then we just did our homework or whatever we had to do. And then my dad would come home a couple hours later and then we'd have dinner. And growing up with that, when I was able to come home and see that and seeing that my health was an issue too, and do this for my husband, even my dog that we had kind of benefited from it. Like his little personality changed. He was happy to see us home. He wasn't so fidgety. I mean, I just say a lot of things, my home benefit, because I'm also there to take care of my home. It's not just a place I go and shower and clean and eat sometimes and spend time with my husband. It's a place where I could make it my own instead of my house looking like, a 20-something apartment. It looks like a house. And I took more pride and joy. And also I learned to do that, being in my home and saying, I've got this time on my hands. I could fix this couch, or I could do this, or, learn something new in the home. And I guess what I'm trying to stress to the ladies out there is you think, what am I going to do? I don't want to be a housewife and do all this. But when you become that, you have to find something to do. because you don't just want to be sitting home doing nothing. You want him to come home to something. So you start making that peace. You start making that comfort. You start doing things to benefit your household, your husband. And I don't know how else to put it, but it's really something special when he comes home and he's just so happy to see you. And it's a great feeling. And I wish everybody could kind of feel what I'm talking about. But the other thing is, I had to learn the hard way that I was just a number. And, I would tell people a lot of times when I had the job that I had when I met my husband, we got married. Oh, it's my favorite job. It's the best job in the world, until they laid me off and sent my job to India. And I found out how important I was, all the hard work I did, all the team building, all the support I gave to charities and stuff. That didn't mean anything. Nobody from 10, 12 years ago from my company will remember me now. There's no yearbook or anything. It's not like high school. So it was really an eye opener. Like, I'm just a person on a spreadsheet making somebody else rich. And I rather put that time and energy into my home. So the benefit, I would say, for my health and well-being of my husband and my family, even though my family was just me and my husband and a dog, was that I was there to cultivate that, if I can't say anything else. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much, Lisa. All right, Hermisha, we're going to come to you. What are some of the benefits you can think about working for your man?
Wow, ladies, you guys are hitting on it. The peace and the home and all of it is so, so important. The one of the things that stood out to me, and I was just also thinking more like big picture, is the idea of wealth building and the reality that in the Black community with Black families, the racial wealth gap is staggering. I think we are behind about 70% or so. The gap is that large, right? And so when we think about the big umbrella here of the benefit of working for your man, like Lisa hit on, we can work for everyone else, but is that coming home? Because they are quick to replace us. But how about we build it together and create a legacy? So it's really what's hitting me is the legacy part of all of this, that we can couple with a good man and build a legacy and a legacy of wealth that transforms or transitions or passes down rather from generations to generation. And actually, a Proverbs was sticking out to me. It says, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. So I think that that's a huge benefit that I'm sitting with, that that when we think about just building that for a home, I mean, think about the stresses that when we talk about just Black families or even families of color, but I'm just going to centralize Black families. And this is why Kevin was really pushing the nuclear family, because that is how we fight. That is how we repair. That is how we restore. That is how we rebuild. That is how we couple together. And that is how our children have a firmer foundation to make it, to be able to stand in this world. And then that we can sort of give them a head start. I mean, it's just so many different benefits, but the biggest one is the financial one and the opportunity to build some wealth. And because at the end of the day, we can't take it with us. This is for our children's children. So that is something that's sticking out for me.
All right, fantastic. I love it. Thank you so much, ladies. We will go over to our second point and take a lap around. We're going to continue talking about the benefits of working for your man. And the ladies talked a lot about finance. And, Kevin, like any man, very analytical, very logical. And in listening to this episode, one of the things that he talked about was not only the personal cost, but the financial cost of these toxic relationships with our employers, right? Kevin, never to mince words. He said that women had a toxic relationship because we would always run back to our employers. If you all heard Kevin, he often used to say, when things got hard, what would a lot of women do? Go back to school, which for a lot of women, that meant racking up debt. And when he would just say how much debt a lot of women carried, and then you're in the type of job, I don't know the statistics, but the average salary was, let's say, in the 50s or 60s, if that, and women were just saddled with so much debt. When he asks, if you would quit your full-time job to work part-time for your man, and you really start looking at the numbers, it's actually very attractive. So I'm going to continue the story time and give you all a little bit of my experience. So now I'm home. I moved from the 2-hour commute, um, ripping and running the way that I was, done it for 20 years, just thought it was normal. I still work, but I work for a technology company, 100% remote now. And I never had that option before. It was always a request or a form or whatnot. And now I can wake up, I can work out, which I need. Then I can come down here and do my work. Then as soon as my meetings are over, I can go cook a healthy meal. So I'm loving life. Things are happy. I'm getting used to my new normal. And my guy asked me one day, he was like, "How much do you cost?" And I was like, "Whatever do you mean?" And y'all know us women, our money is our money. Who are you asking me what I'm spending on? But I know better. And he said, "I want you to put together a budget. I need to know how much you cost." And I was like, "Okay." So I went to Google and I found a spreadsheet. I'm getting vulnerable with you all. I'm letting you know I didn't know the round number. I do now, but I got all of my bills together. Luckily, I don't have any debt, just a mortgage, but got all the bills together for myself, what I pay for the kids, for school fees, for groceries, for everything. And I said, "This is my number." And I was kind of waiting and like, "Oh God, what is he going to say? What is he going to say?" And he looked it over and he said, "Okay, I can handle that." I was shocked. Never in my life had I had someone who was going to absorb me and the expense. Ladies, we have to remember that we are an expense. Men look at us as a cost benefit calculator. So the value that we bring in a relationship needs to well overpay how much it costs. So especially when we start thinking that we are more valuable than we are. If you listen in this episode, Kevin was big on women making a decision while they had the leverage of their youth and beauty and then building something together, because as an older woman with kids, there's a lot more cost that comes along with that. And so the moral of the story for me on this one was, one, trust your man. But two, we have those defenses up that we think I got to do everything by myself. We're so unused to having a man really protect and really provide for us. And what I realized is that he was asking me not to be critical, but to make sure that he could take me on and everything that I came with, which was incredibly humbling and makes me want to work even harder to maintain that position. So we talked about it, and he has a plan to retire me at 55 instead of 65. Now, I know some people might be like, "Oh my gosh, 55 is still older." I'll take 10 years off of that rat race that I was in a heartbeat. So whatever I need to do to get on his program, I'm willing to do it. Because if you remember, one of the things that Kevin often used to say, "Ladies, what do you want life to look like when you're 50? What do you want life to look like when you're 60?" And if you think about it, how many senior women do you see still racing into the office like you're doing in your 20s and 30s? So think about the future, because it'll be here before you know it. So that's my second story time. AV, I'm going to come to you. What other benefits do you have working for your man?
Thank you, Maggie. That's such a heartwarming story, just to kind of hear how others have gone through different things as well. And I've thought about this for some time. Yesterday, I just accepted a job offer, and I had to really, really think about what this looked like. So, you're taught in college to go as hard as you can, to go for these executive jobs. And when I was in this negotiation conversation, I decided to actually make a lateral move, right? And for me, that was important to me because I don't want to be bummed out and depleted when I get home, right? So during the negotiation process, for me, the focus was family first. What can I do to be, so I'm literally clocking out at 5, not putting in anything extra, getting everything that I can for my family, with also the plan of I'm not going to do this job forever, right? Those negotiation conversations are very different versus the woman that wants to be an executive, the woman that wants to be a director, the woman that wants to have a management position. It's very, very different. So I had to really, go into that conversation with some intent. And listening to Kevin in this particular episode, he said one thing that stuck out, and it's the question he asks everyone. Do you want to have to work to pay significant bills after you have your first or second or third child? Right? You ask a few more questions, and so many women value college and these degrees and these high paying jobs, right? But what was the answer to that question? Most of them said no, they wanted to be home. So if you think about it from a man's perspective, you're going to go and do this job. You're going to go to college and rack up all of the student loan debt, then go into it and do this job only for you to quit to come back home to the family anyway. It was one of the deepest things I heard all week. And I was just like, oh, we have to talk about this. Because if you guys have noticed, over the past few weeks, we've talked about blue collar workers. We've talked about different family setups. And each of us are giving you different perspectives from different generations. So if I can offer you anything, it is that as someone that has all these student loans, I'm like, you know what? I need to set myself up so when it is time for the relationship, like to Maggie's point, I'm not giving this man a giant price tag with the decisions that I've made, right? So I'm just considering making it as easy as possible. And for future wives out there, I think you might want to think about that. So if you're in your 20s now, do you really want it? Do you really want the executive director stuff? Because it's really, I don't know if it's worth it. And I was very proud yesterday making the decision that I made with the best interests of my family in mind. So that's what I have on that one. And Maggie, back over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, AB. Lisa?
Yes, I believe the benefits to him when working for him is because I'm a housewife. The benefits from my husband because I work for him are that he doesn't have to deal with the toxicity that I would continue to get from the job. Because I think one of the things that Kevin hit on in the episode that we watched pertaining to all this is that the job for a lot of us is what is toxic in our lives. The job is the toxic thing. And even when I was working, as much as I love one of the jobs I had until they let me go, the other jobs I have weren't always so great. And it was toxic with the relationships with the people in the office, the other women in the office, and bringing that stuff home and just, why am I not getting whatever the issue is, going on, the office politics and all that. So I would bring that home, and then my husband would come home, or even when we were dating too, same thing, come home, and then you're both with the stuff from work, and it's not a good environment. So the benefit of me working for him is that he's my boss. He's not a toxic boss. He's a good person. He's looking out for me, and I can believe in him, and what he tells me is true, that you're going to keep me for the next 15 years. You're not going to fire. You're not going to lay me off in 2 months and not give me a clue. I can depend on this person. And so I think what hit home for me listening to Kevin in this episode is that what we call toxic is the job. It's not the way we put it on men or whatever in our lives. It's things from the job that we bring home and the issues we have to deal with and the overtime and all the energy and time in our life that we put into it. So that really rang true for me. And I also feel like the benefit of being a wife at home is just the value that, like I was talking about, the value I see in my husband's face and my daughter's face, knowing that, I'm here keeping the house going and making it comforting, and the value in for anybody who comes to my home, or any what I want to say is extended family, whatever I can do, because it's just like, you just, I guess the best way to say it is your husband or the person you're working with, they can see all the work you're putting into it. And I think Kevin even talked about it, how they could see you putting all that into the job. Why can't she do that for me? And I think that's what really hit home. And I hope that hits home with a lot of people, is all that energy we put into these jobs and the careers and the bag, what about your family life and your husband and your relationship? Because a lot of that's going to waste, that time, effort, and energy. So I'll leave it there.
All right. Thank you so much, Lisa. So Hermisha, we will come to you. How else can you benefit your man working for him?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm thinking as a former wife, just a couple points. Well, first off, I would say knowing your skill sets is going to be really, really important because your skill sets directly impact your value to your man, right? Kevin talked about knowing your value or your SMV, and we often hear about your fitness, femininity, and cooperation, and those are all important. And quite frankly, those are basic. That gets you in the door. But you want to keep a man. What's your skills? What's the intellect? What do they say? What the intellect do? Or with the mindset, right? And what are some tangible skills that you have that can transfer over to working for your man? And he often talks about administrative skills. If you can run some QuickBooks, he said CPA or accountants are excellent, right? So to be able to benefit that household, again, working together, building generational wealth. And so for me as a former wife, that's essentially what I did. I ran a business and I strategically opened that business to run whether I was in it or not, whether I was in the physical office or remotely. So I had that flexibility and having the skill sets to manage QuickBooks, to do all the things so that I'm not the face of it all the time. And so thankfully, I've been able to in a process of bringing some clinicians on. And so that can run without me. And I'm continuing that even on the other side of my marriage. And so I would say that those are benefits in terms of being able to know on the front end. For me, when I went to school, I think I'm a little unique because a lot of folks go to school, get all the debt and get the degrees and don't end up working in their actual field. I literally got my degree in sociology and education, social work, got my license, getting my PhD, and literally doing the field that I studied for and open to practice and things of that nature, right? That's not always the case, but you have to know if you're going to invest that amount in school, what's your ROI and how can your ROI also benefit your household at the end of the day. And so for me, I have 2 children and I've been able to work remotely, but I would just highlight just being able to identify your skills. If you're going to go into school, knowing the ROI and knowing at the end of the day, how does that transition into your household so that you're not left giving a company or giving corporations all of your time and energy, if you will, right? So I think we're all sort of echoing the same thing. Your skills, whether you go to school or get a trade, it might be cheaper to just get a trade, actually. Whether you do that or not, how can it, at the end of the day, how are you prioritizing your home? Because home, at the end of the day, is our domain, and our skills that we can bring is part of our value. And Kevin talks about that's currency, right? So you want to build your value. You want to know what you bring to the table, and it's more than just yourself. So that's what I'll say about that.
All right, fantastic. I see you all in the chat. We're going to take one last lap around, but if you have questions, go ahead and drop your questions in the chat. Thank you all for the engagement. So the last point that we have for today's agenda is talking about creative ways to work for your man. And, whether or not your man has a business or he's also working corporate, I'm going to expand it a little bit. Creative ways that you can be in support of your man, because ultimately whatever you do that benefits the family benefits the man. I saw the comment about legacy, and that's really what men work and give their lives for, is so that they can live on through their legacy. And even if you're past, having kids, you are still part of his legacy. You will keep his legacy alive. So hopefully you all are seeing the red thread here. You can have it all. You just can't have it all at the same time. So I have a heart for younger ladies, especially being a boy mom. I don't have daughters. I know the feeling of just marching towards the same drumbeat that everybody is doing. The system that we live in, from, being this consumer culture to the schools that we go to and corporate America, it is a machine. Now, there are some benefits. It can be really beneficial, but just take the time while you do have the leverage of youth to think about what you want to do long term. I saw Rodney's comment about, will you remember your job or your relationship when you retire? And what it makes me think of is, will your job remember you when you retire? And I can raise my hand and say, I bought that dream hook, line, and sinker. I was memorizing those mission statements. I had my elevator pitch. I was that corporate disciple until a leadership change and they decide we're going in another direction. And then, what do you have? Luckily for me, I did prioritize relationships, and I am so glad that I did. So I always like to give you all some tangible things that you can take away from the Wives Club. So if you heard Kevin in this episode, and if you haven't listened to it, I highly recommend you listen to his monologue. He said, especially modern women, we're going to have to stop fighting with our men. We're going to have to bet on them like we bet on these degrees, like we bet on these jobs. You're going to report to somebody. Like Lisa said, why not choose to work for someone who actually cares about you instead of someone who's just going to extract all that energy and brain power and intellect and everything that you've got. And then when you age out, thanks, but no thanks. It's not personal. It really is just business. That's what we sign up for when we go corporate. Another thing I would advise, if you are going to work corporate, absolutely. I think Hermisha talked about that and Kevin talked about that. Look at the skills that you can glean. Your employer is going to get everything that they want from you. Make sure that it's mutually beneficial. Make sure that you're learning as much as you can to bring back to service your husband, your children, to be a support in the community. I saw a comment about some women, all they can talk about is their job. How useful are you? Kevin talked about that all the time. Men choose us for our utility. How are we helpful to them? And one of the last things that I'll say is a comment that my man made one day this week. And y'all know he gives it to me straight. And I filter it a little bit and bring it to you all because it is important. But one of the things that Kevin talked about in this episode is how we represent our men. So whether you are the wife or the significant other, are you carrying yourself in a way that shows that you have put him first and you're getting on his program? My guy said, if a man is not bringing structure to your life, he's not thinking about you long term. And I went through this too with my story time of, do you really want that big corporate job? Everything in me was just kind of like, what do you mean? Everything that I've done all these years, the master's degree and all of that. And I had to really think about it. What's best for us long term? Same thing. I need to see how much you cost. What do you mean? You want me to explain where all of my money goes? And then I realized, wow, he's really thinking about how he can retire me early. So if you're used to just being footloose and fancy free, if you have a guy that's like, yeah, absolutely, do you, spend what you want to spend, go where you want to go, do whatever you want to do publicly, he doesn't have intentions for you. Because a man who is actually thinking about you long term, he is bringing structure and he is bringing order. And you may look at that as controlling, but if he doesn't care, he will let you fly close to the sun and get burned and find someone who will get on his program. So I just want to share that with you all, some of the things that I've learned, bumping my head and skinning my knee and sharing them here, because believe me, on this side of it, I'm a lot happier reporting to him than a corporation that, like Lisa said, I'm just a line item on the balance sheet. All right, AV, I'm going to come to you. What other creative ways can you support your man?
Thanks, Maggie. All really good points. You know, Maggie, you cook from time to time. Just doing it today.
I cook every day.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. So 3 things that come to mind here. You know, and this kind of came to mind as Maggie was talking, and that was just kind of thinking of switching your mindset, switching your mindset when you are dealing with corporations, whether it's your own job, and it doesn't even matter what field you're in, switching your mindset to be family centric, right? So making sure that you're thinking about your family and your household first instead of thinking about yourself and your own career trajectory, right? So that's something to consider. The second thing is get the skills and bring it home, right? So I had this thought when Hermisha was mentioning accounting, right? So Kevin talked about this a lot. Many business owners need to have that skill set, meaning how do I balance my books at the end of the month? How do I balance my books at the end of the year? And not only that, how do I balance my household expenses in addition to that? So it's an important skill. So there are skills that you can get from your jobs to bring back home. But if you change your mindset to be family centric first, it's going to be extremely different as far as results. And then the last thing is just help him out. So many times, like, our men have to go out there and slay the dragon. And sometimes they just want to come home and talk, meaning they might not want to talk about their day. So, make it a healthy environment where if he doesn't want to talk, that's okay. But if you do, I'm here to listen. And, when you can become that confidant in him, he will come to you and have those conversations. Whereas if you are, talking about your own career pursuits when you guys get home from work, it's tiring because you're both drained from the day. I think it's much better to be the ear than be the person that's talking, right? But that's what I have for this one. Just some creative ways to get the juices flowing. Give you guys a few ideas as well. Back to you, Maggie.
All right, fantastic. Lisa, I'm coming to you. What creative ways can you work for your man?
Well, my husband knows that I am a researcher. I am not a problem solver, but if we need to find something or find out how it works and or how does this process work, because he don't have time for it or whatever, or just like I think I've described before, I had to do something with the insurance, but it took me a while to find the process, find out who I need to talk to. So I'm a go-getter in that way. If there's something that we need to get taken care of and he doesn't have time to do it, I find a way to who I need to contact, who do I need to research, who do I need to get in contact or bring to the house, or it could be fixing getting something with our cars fixed or planning a trip. I do all that, and I don't just do it for him. I do it for our extended family, and in a way so much that some people want to pay me or have paid me to help them do things, but that's just something. When I worked, I always considered myself as SME, a subject matter expert. So now that I'm not working, work for my husband, work for my family, I've become a subject matter expert in things that have to do with my family, our household, anything my family and my husband and I are trying to do. So that's where I take something I was really proud about in my work before. I take that and doing that for my family. So when I can find out, when I learn things on YouTube, like how to refurbish something or how to install a dishwasher or how to sell things on eBay. I collect dolls and stuff from my childhood. I still have my, what is it called? A Nintendo. And those things are worth money now. And so, when you research and learn about that, so I feel like when I do stuff like that, and my husband's like, oh, she knows all about that. Somebody else might ask, or somebody at his job's like, you did that on eBay. So I'm a resource to my husband, our family, and others around us. And I think I can't just say I'm just a housewife. And I'm not that I can't just say I'm a housewife, but I also feel I don't want people to feel like that's the only thing you're good for, or, because I think what Kevin's trying to say is being that helpmate to your husband comes across in a lot of different ways. And it's just how we look at it and see there's different ways of being that helpmate. So that's the most important. So I'll leave it there.
All right, fantastic. I'm sure Hermisha will be right back with us. Y'all know sometimes we struggle stream here. So, in the meantime, I see some questions coming in. AV, if you want to drop the link, if anybody wants to add to the conversation, you can chat with us in person if you feel like camming up. But I did see this question from the Quiet Storm. He's asking AV, all right, AV, would you quit your job if your man or your husband asked you to? If no, why not?
The answer is yes. And here's the thing, the quiet storm. I haven't told my audience this on my side or in, and just kind of have kept this quiet. I think I had mentioned I was kind of going through some stuff, but I left my job in February of this year, guys, for similar reasons. It was the most extreme toxic environment I've ever been in. I had to sign a contract for me to not tell y'all that, right? And that came to an end yesterday when I found something extremely better. And while it may not pay where I was, I'm willing to be in a place where I'm much happier to make my family happier. And if he asked me to leave, because with relationships, the core of it is happiness. So if I'm coming home miserable all the time, who do you think is going to get impacted by that? People that live at home. I don't want to be in a sour mood all the time, right? So to answer your question, A Quiet Storm, yes, absolutely. Oh my God, say the word. Where do I sign? But I also know how that looks because it's actually a funny question because on the lead attorney side, sometimes we talk about that. And that can sound a little unbelievable to some people, right? The blue cap comes out. It happens. But, I mean it when I say being a man's piece is such a high priority for me that I'd rather be in a peaceful environment than be in an unruly environment. And, Maggie, I'll turn it back over to you. We do have someone in the back, but I don't know if any of the other ladies would answer the question in a different way, have anything to add on, that sort of thing.
Oh, fantastic. I do want to bring Hermisha up so we can close out that last round. So Hermisha, we were talking about any creative ways that you could work for your man or in support of your man, whether he is or is not a business owner.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think I just keeping it broad. I mean, we were hitting on some tangible things like knowing your skill sets, knowing what you bring to the table, knowing that all the things that you bring in terms of skill sets, it's to edify your home. And so the thing that's popping up for me is the passage that says, a wise woman builds her home, but a foolish woman literally tears it down with her own hands. And so under the umbrella that we're all echoing, your home is your domain. Building wealth, building legacy. But how can we build and edify and inspire? Everything we do, everything that you do is to build up your home and your man because we're helpmeets at the end of the day. And so that's the main thing I would say. And how we could tear it down is perhaps one could argue working 50, 11 hours for someone else, and then you're bringing the leftovers. That could be another form of tearing down your home in a subtle way because you're not really fully present emotionally. You're not as inspirational. You're not building anyone because you're depleted, right? And we could be operating from a place of lack. We're less patient. We're snapping at our children. We're snapping at our husband. Those are ways that we can actually tear down our home, right? So all of this, we're not saying that you should not work or anything with it. Whatever skill you do, at the end of the day, use it to build your home because that's what the Proverbs say. You're a wise woman if you do. So that's what I would say on that.
All right, fantastic. Well, AV says we have someone in the back. I do want to respond really quickly. Real Bravado had a comment up there, which is very true. And you all know, Kevin, even though he spoke to the high value men, he had a deep respect for the average man. That's the stock that all of us come from. And Real Bravado did say that most average women won't get the experience to work for a man that can employ you. And that is a true statement. So we do want to recognize that, and it's okay. Kevin talked often about that IKEA marriage, starting together young and building something together. But Kevin's catalog is so vast, and we want to make sure that we are inclusive here. But yes, if you want to go for that man who can sit you down, there is a cost, and we just want to make sure that you all are aware and that you get on his program early. All right, AV, I'm going to turn it up to you. Who do we have in the back?
Well, speaking of the devil, we have the Real Bravado Network in the back. So I'm going to go ahead and add him to the stream. Real Bravado, how are you doing?
Hi, ladies, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Okay,
you.
I'm on my phone. I am at work, so I'm just trying to figure all this stuff out. I'm so used to being at my little, my workstation where I stream from. Excellent topic. Yes, Maggie. I'm glad you brought it up and pointed out that the average woman doesn't have no idea what you guys are talking about. Is about especially when you start talking about, how much it costs absorbing a man being able to absorb you into his situation. A lot of them, when you even approach talking about that, they have a very visceral reaction to it because they don't understand it, because they don't see it on the day to day. A very small number of women will ever even get close to even quote unquote dating a guy who is even in the realm of possibility of being able to, I always say retire your woman, meaning bringing her out of the corporate space. But that doesn't mean that you still can't get on that man's page and on his program. That does not mean that you can't bring what you're bringing from your job and bringing it into your home. I talked on my last stream very briefly about a woman's money. When you marry a gentleman, how do you view your money? Do you think that money belongs to you? And most women believe because they go out and earn it when they get married that that's their money. It's not, and I have to break it to a few ladies. I have to break the bad news to you. That money don't belong to you. That money belongs to the institution called your marriage. That money don't belong to you. You and your husband are just the stewards over that money. It doesn't belong to you. So for a lot of our ladies, they have a hard time grappling with that situation. And if I could just share two quick personal stories. When I first got married, I think about a month into my marriage, I started talking about, blending our finances, and this woman took my head off. My money, my paycheck. Don't ask me what's in my bank account. It ain't none of your business. That's what she's. This was a month into my marriage, talking about getting sucker punched. You know, after the marriage. But she's indicative, that behavior is indicative of what's out here with our ladies and not understanding that when you do marry, it is a complete and utter sacrifice that you make. You sacrifice you should sacrifice your skill set, your resources, and your finances to the institution that you're signing up for. If you're not willing to do that, then why are you getting married? And often Kevin talked about risk. You cannot avoid risk. You can only minimize it. Now, if you're coming into the marriage with substantial property or resources that you inherited, I'm a completely and 100% on board with you going ahead and protecting that. Most states um, will allow you to protect that, but they'll never let you. Most states will never allow you to protect what happens during the marriage because whatever happens in the marriage is part of the marriage. So, a lot of times people get it mixed up with prenups. And then, second of all, the second story I want to talk to you guys. I was dating a lady for a couple of years, and about a year and a half ago, I was running. I call it my mom and pop business, and it was doing exceptionally well. And she's an administrative assistant. I needed someone to come in for 10 hours a week and process my paperwork and manage my calendar for 10 hours a week. I asked the lady I was seeing, I said, hey, here's my parameters, here's what I need. You set your hours. I just need this work done, and I will pay you what your job is paying you for 10 hours worth of work a week. Meaning, I was going to double her income. for 10 hours a week worth of work, and she rejected it.
Wow.
She did not have to. And,
Insane.
and that, if she had a done that, that time that I had to spend on processing my own paperwork would have been time for me to actually grow what I needed to do. I could have been doing that today. But instead, because I had a lady who at that point that's when I understood that she wasn't for me, because it was, even if she was, it was such an irrational decision on her part, because she didn't even look at it from the fact that I was doubling resources for her own home. So a lot of our ladies out here, first of all, are not accustomed to guys like that. They're not accustomed to the structure, especially when you talk about African American women. They're not accustomed to structure because 80% of our women are the heads of their homes. And so when you got a full throated, chest beating man coming through the door, putting his 12-inch boots on the table and saying this is how we do things, that's a fight. And so a lot of our ladies are out here not really understanding a lot of what you ladies are talking about, unfortunately. But that doesn't mean that you ladies don't keep up the good work that you're doing on this subject. And I'm out here begging our women to understand. There's peace in a man that brings structure. There's peace in a man that demands greatness. There's peace in that. And a lot of times, a lot of the ladies don't see it. The I'm so proud of my sister. I have a sister that's a year younger than me, and unfortunately, when she was very young, 17, she had a kid, and by a bum. And then she met my brother-in-law, which is my dad's favorite son, by the way, George. And George was not your typical black dude. He was into BMX bike racing. He was into technology and videography. He was corny as he wanna be. And but this man, my sister, recognized the character and the quality of this brother, and they've now been together 20 years. And then, and my sister is so happy. He's built her two homes. I love watching my sister interact with this man. That's one less sister that we have to worry about. She's the only sister that we don't have to worry about. And I have seven of them. All right,
Thank
ladies. I just wanted to bring my 2 cents in and not really hijack the wives club, but because I can do that. I can do
Thank you
that.
so much, Real Bravado Network, and thank you for always being such a supporter of this channel. I love hearing from the men here. It's no accident that the men protect this space and moderate for us. And one thing that I'll just say, especially to the younger ladies, we talked about that we have to, well, Kevin actually talked about in the stream, betting on our men. And I understand if you didn't come from like a two-parent nuclear family, it can seem intrusive. It can seem controlling. It's not, because believe me, a man who doesn't care is not going to put his life on the line for you. So I'll just offer this, especially for those of us who date men in our same age group. When you date your peers, you are going to have to wait for a man to catch up, because Kevin said it, right? A man is going to have to take those 10 years to build himself. That's why he promoted age gap. But what I would offer is this, now that I'm 47, I remember being that stubborn 25-year-old, 35-year-old, and then I was hitting the wall. But if you think you can do it now, that's fine. But can you do it until 65? That is something that a man has over a woman, usually. Of course, there are exceptions, not all, not all, not all. However, even if, like in TJ's example, even if it's a man who's at the same income level as you, he has the stamina that we don't. Ladies, I am telling you, you are going to slow down. It is natural. I think it's normal. Kevin often used to talk about that pressure being built for shoulders and not hips, not only for the weight of that pressure, but the duration of that pressure. So if you think about it over the long term, even if a man is an average earner, he's willing to work until he dies. We are not. So keep that in mind when you're looking at a man who you think it's going to be 50-50. I promise you, he will outlast you. So keep that in mind. And getting on
One more
his
quick
pro.
thing, Maggie, if you might, if you will. One more quick thing to your point. Listen, I'll be 46 on Tuesday, and I work 86 hours a week. I do my YouTube streaming. I support my these channels. I run my business. I'm out here running like I'm 20 years old, and then I still see my personal trainer 3 times a week for an hour. And I was talking to a lady that's my peer who could barely get out of bed working 35 hours a week. To your point about the stamina, and it does, and she was really complaining about not having her day organized. And I told her, I said, I I have all of these things in my day, and I still can fill it with other stuff because I'm very intentional about my time, the time that I spend on each project, and organizing and being focused on what I'm doing. I mean, when I hear the ladies talk about, well, I got my job and I got this and I got that, I just look at them. What are you talking about? I mean, that's before 11 o'clock for me. So what are you talking about? But to your point, Maggie, yes, 46, and I'm still Kevin. God rest his soul. He was what 52, out working. The brother was out working me, and I'm working. And the brother was out working me, and that's because we're wired different. We are just wired differently, just from an emotional and biological standpoint. We are just wired differently. You should not want to be out here at 35 or 45 or 50 out here trying to slang and compete. What for? What for?
Agree. Thank you so much, Real Bravado. I'm going to let the other ladies, did anybody else want to chime in on what he said?
I think he said it all.
Not just what he said, but I mean, what he said was very valid and true. But also on the topic, what I was thinking about listening to what he was saying, a lot of our military, when I think about spouses who support their husbands, because you travel so much and you move so often, you really can't have a job that lasts like 10, 12 years because you're every 3, 4, 5 years, you might be going somewhere. So if you want to see a lot of women who are supportive of their men, because also when they have to go serve and go on deployment, you have to be the foundation for your family, for your kids while your husband's away. So if you want to see more women in these roles, I would say look at military families, because even myself, that was the way my family was structured. My mom took care of us. If my dad was away, luckily by the time I was 5, he was always home. He wasn't on ships anymore. But um, you'll see a lot of these women who are doing the work at home, the housewife work or whatever the husband needs them to do while he's defending our freedom, I guess, because he's in the military. So they're also good examples, and they're married to average men. And as Maggie was saying, because I'm also someone who was married young, and we had kind of an IKEA marriage. So you could look at the military in a way of IKEA, because if your husband makes the military a career, like 20 years or more, which I know a lot of guys have done that, from my husband's friends, by the time they start in 18 and they're 40 in their 40s, they're already got a whole military career, and they're out to do other things, and they're kicking it in the second year, like TJ said. So it is possible. You don't have to find a gazillionaire or whatever people talk about, but you could find someone that can put you in the same kind of position. So you do have options, I guess I'm trying to say. So I'll just leave it at that.
Well, Lisa, we're going to put you back on the hot seat because I see a question that came in from the quiet storm. Lisa, was there ever a time that you debated to integrate yourself back into the workforce? If yes, what made you stop?
No, once I was out, I was like, because I see the difference. Like I was explaining earlier, when I saw the difference, because I was kind of sent home, like, you need to go home and take care of yourself, get your health together. And it was like, okay. And I started seeing the difference, and I'm like, I'm killing myself for these companies. And 10 years into it, I really can see how I have family members and friends who are the same age as me or close, and they're still doing this 9 to 5 and doing all this. And they just, you can see the health, the physicality, and the effect on their families. So I can see the difference. So no, I would not change it. I would continue if it was possible. And luckily, from in my family situation, it was possible. My husband was able to manage it. And he was like, I got it, throw it on his back, and we just kept going. So, but if I had to go back to work, part-time or whatever it is needed to support my family or help out my family, I'm willing to do that as well. But right now, that's not necessary, and hopefully it won't be. But I'll just leave it there.
All right. So I see a question from Najia. It says, Hi, all. Hi, Najia. I'm wondering, in what ways do you prioritize your home when you still work, even from home? I'm a homeschool mom, and my home alone keeps me incredibly busy. Oh, yes, yes, yes. This is not for the faint at heart. And I love this question because what it emphasizes is that working from home or being a full-time mom or a housewife or stay-at-home mom is work. What always used to trip me up is when women would call into Kevin's shows and they would have these ideas about, I'm going to have a nanny, I'm going to have a chef, we're going to have, these exotic vacations, and I'm just going to be living the life of luxury, watching TV and kicking my feet up. When those of us who actually do the work realize that it's work. So to answer your question, I have learned, and we'll take a lap around and let the ladies explain how we make home a priority. You have to come up with a system that works for you. So for me, whether it's lists and reminders, and I shared this with one of my consults this week. Make a list of what you have to do and make a list of what you want to do. Okay, so I'm talking to Maggie. And once you get your list of have to do things down like clockwork, then I pick one thing from my want to do list. So if I know I have to work out, get the kids to school, work, and have a hot meal ready for dinner when everybody comes home, I get that like a well-oiled machine, whether it's meal prepping, whether it is, okay, book bags and everything in the car the night before so we're not rushing, whatever I need to do to get all those have to do things checked off. And then if I have projects that I want to do, if there's a little corner in the house that I want to clean, if I want to go through the closets and get clothes that they don't wear anymore ready for donate, I have a list of those that are want to do things. And then I take one. And once I get that done, I kind of allow myself to celebrate that one thing because it is a lot. And for me, I can start a lot of things and have some unfinished projects. And my guy was actually like, babe, one thing at a time. So I've had to slow down and get organized so that for me, can have that success. And then tomorrow or the next week or whenever, I get the next thing off my have to do list while I'm keeping my off my want to do list while I'm keeping my have to do list going. So that's a little tip for me. AV, how would you answer that one?
Thanks, Maggie. I would say, I agree with you with lists. I just kind of pulled up mine. This is something I do every single morning, which is also, look at this, guys, color coded. I have gel pens for different sections of how my day is going to look, just to make it more fun. But I would say the biggest thing that I do, I am relentless with my time. That means that with priorities, family is first. That's what I learned from this experience with that job. Whatever is on my list in the morning that I took time to write down, I'm going to start in the order of priority. So if the goal is to do things with family, everyone else is going to wait. If I have meetings that I need to get done throughout the day, Everyone else is going to wait. Do you know this morning I responded to text messages to people that I haven't talked to since Sunday? But that's how important it was for me to get through the priorities first. And I think that's the biggest advice that I can give, whether you're a housewife or whether, I think Najia was saying that she's a homeschool mom, right? So if you're a homeschool mom, a bulk of your day should be teaching those children, right? That would, in my opinion, using the same thing, that would be a bulk of my day. So if other people need my attention, no, the homeschooling comes first, right? And that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned recently is it's okay to take your time back, and it's okay to have other people wait until you get through your list, and then you attend to the other things that are on that list as well. So that's how I would answer that one, Maggie.
All right. Lisa, what about you? How do you prioritize home?
My family, my husband and my family come first, but my dad often reminds me, because I'm bad at this, to make myself a priority too, because I'll be doing stuff for my husband, my daughter, family members, and I'll forget to do for myself. So, isn't really a hard thing for me. The hard thing for me is to make myself a priority as well in those lists or in the things I do throughout the day. So I will say I pride myself on, prioritizing my family, my husband and my daughter, but making myself a priority is one I struggle with. So for me, that would be the struggle part.
All right. And Hermisha, how do you prioritize? You're our homeschooling mom. How do you prioritize work, homeschool, and everything?
Yes, that was I loved homeschool. So as a former wife, that's exactly what I did. So the beautiful thing about homeschool, you have the control over the curriculum and the hours. And so you have to know how your household runs, or what the flow of the home is, and your husband and all the things. So for me, what it looked like is by noon we were done with school. Everything after that was chess practice, piano, or field trips, or lots and lots of exploration and play while I did admin work, right? So curriculum, it really, from 8:30 to like 11:30, you can get the bulk of your curriculum in. I would even say from 8:30 to 10:30. I mean, depending on your kids and knowing their learning style, knowing your children, knowing how your kids absorb information. Maybe you need to park a little longer with phonics or math. My daughters were reading at 5 years old, or doing reading 4 or 5 years old. And that's the beauty of homeschool. Kids have that one-on-one centralized attention, and they tend to move through subjects fast, but you also want to prioritize their emotional intelligence. But nonetheless, I would say knowing the flow of your home, knowing what your children needs, and then also you can really finish schooling before noon or at noon, and then everything else, maybe that is the admin or the free play, and then you're doing admin work. And then I love what Lisa said. This is really important. This was important for me, this is where I suffered, where I was stretched in many different directions, and I didn't have, where was the pouring back into myself, right? And so, you really want to prioritize that. So really what I'm talking about is time management, but situational awareness of your children, their needs, their learning style, your husband, the flow of the home, all of those things that we're managing. I mean, being a stay-at-home, and then if you're homeschooling, that's a amazing skill set that brings a lot of value to a home. And so being able to make sure that you're prioritizing your mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being to be able to pour out so much during the day, during top of working, it is not for the faint at heart, I would say.
I agree wholeheartedly. None of this is for the faint of heart, ladies. It is a job. And Kevin actually used to say that. Being with him was a full-time job. Having a man is a full-time job. So don't think you're just going to wake up like this. I see a question from public relations. So we're going to take that question, and then we'll come to the quiet storm. Y'all are coming at us with the questions today. All right. So public relations says, is there anything that Kevin said that you guys don't agree with? And you know what? Kevin got a lot of smoke for his strong opinions. And yes, he was polarizing. And I would say, he did that to get our attention. Those of us who had the benefit of speaking with him one-on-one, he was really, really gracious and really had a heart to help. He just had that sense of urgency that he needed to, make his point very crystal clear. One of the things, to answer your question, that I would say I didn't agree with or maybe didn't apply to me, the 6 month time frame that you should have, the ring. But we are in different phases of life. Now, I do believe, Kevin often talked about this, especially when you have ladies, when you have your most leverage, when you have your youth and your womb and your beauty, we all need to be moving with intention, right? If you want marriage or long term. But when you are past childbearing years, especially when you're dating a man that's your age or older, he's lived a whole life. He's been through some things. So he may be a little bit more deliberate, a little bit slower. He's not necessarily going to rush to the altar the way that all of us who dreamt of that as girls think it's just going to be magical. Men don't think about marriage in the same way. It is a very intentional and thoughtful decision for men. For women, a lot of times, it's this emotional, we get caught up in the whirlwind romance of that. It is not the same for men. So realizing that and understanding, maybe he wants to raise his kids and keep things separate and then have his golden years with you. That's my situation, right? So I've been in a long term. The kids are in high school now. So when they're up and out, maybe I'll get a second chance. But I think the mistake we make in assuming or expecting, or God forbid, pressuring a man to give us a ring and a date, we really lose the forest for the trees. And I've learned, maybe the hard way, but I've really learned you can absolutely enjoy the journey. So that's probably what I would say. That a man is going to, propose within a year. I don't think that applies to me. All right, AV, gonna come to you. Anything that Kevin said you don't agree with?
I was thinking the same thing, Maggie, the same thing. And that's the thing. I love Kevin so much. But when we did that coaching, I believed everything he said, right? But then I went out in the world and tried the 6 months thing, but I applied it incorrectly. Here's what I think Kevin meant that a lot of people get misconstrued. It's not that you should get married in 6 months. I think it is more along the lines of, in 6 months, you should know whether or not you want to move forward with that person, right? That is scary to men when they ask you your timeline and you're like, 6 months, you will freak them out and they will run. They will faster than you can believe out of the door. So I learned that mistake recently. So please, guys, be careful out there. If you are single and dating, do not say 6 months. Don't do it. Don't do it. Make sure that you're learning about the person in order to move forward within that 6 months time frame. So I just wanted to agree with Maggie on that and acknowledge fentanyl's question here. But back over to you, Mag.
Okay, fantastic. Hey, y'all, this is what we do here. The older women are teaching the youth, teaching the young, and we're telling you what we got right and what we got wrong. But Lisa, I'm going to come to you. Was there anything that Kevin said that you don't
agree with? I would say I didn't always agree with his high value man thing. Well, I not say I don't agree with. I say I didn't understand why he put so much emphasis on it when I first started listening to him. I was like, okay, but because I'm like, okay, my husband's a Henry, and I think to me, my husband's high value, no matter what status he's at, because I would say any man could do things for you that a high value man can do if you inspire that enough in him. I mean, some of the stuff that my husband's done for me, if I told y'all everything that my husband's done for you, like, y'all did all that? Because it doesn't matter what he's doing it because, I give him, what did they say? The knight in shining armor, they want to rescue you. They want to fix things. They want to problem solve. So like even my own father goes to the ends of the earth to resolve an issue in his family. So I can see that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I didn't always agree with the high value man and the status that Kevin gave, but I understand the reason for it. But I agree with Kevin so much. That's why when I was first introduced to him, I was like, oh my God, this is stuff my dad would say. He's always in daddy mode. So there was really hardly anything disagreed with Kevin, except for a few minor things. And I think, yeah, aside from that, I totally agree with what most of these said. So that's it for me.
All right, fantastic. And Hermisha, coming to you. Was there anything that Kevin said that you don't agree with?
Okay. And I didn't get a chance to mention this to him, but I did disagree with, when I had time with him, I disagreed with something. And he was like, you know what? I don't expect y'all to always 100% agree. And here's was mine. And a lot of us might have this a little bit of disagreement. I just have a different application of it. The exercising option. The exercising option. So I agree and I appreciate it when he said men at a certain caliber or standard or whatnot have options. That is factual, right? Now, whether they exercise that, that is their option, that, you know, they have that choice to do that. I just disagree. Well, I just have come from the perspective that the men that I know I'm equipped for, even though he may have options, he won't exercise them. He could. They are there at his disposal. But he knows what's at home. So he knows what's better. So that's what I would say, Kevin would, I think sometimes it came off as if he was encouraging people that if your man did that, don't be upset. I come from the perspective that, look, actually, let me back up. I appreciated, this is very important. I appreciated that he differentiated between cheating and exercising options, because when you inform the woman, she has a choice. If the man's going to choose to exercise those options, I have a different standard. I would say even though the man I know I'm equipped for may have those options, I know that he won't exercise them, even though he has them. I would just leave it there.
All right. And it's never a Wives Club episode until Hermisha makes AV bring out the fan. Shout out to. All right. I'm going to put myself on the hot seat. We have a question from the Quiet Storm, and he says, Maggie, if your job called you to temporarily hang up your apron, say no more, and return to the office, would you do it? How would that impact your lifestyle? Oh, goodness. Well, the key word here, the quiet storm, is temporarily. And, I don't want to split hairs, but I think all of us can put up with something temporarily, right? I mean, even Lisa talked about if I had to go back to work part-time. So if I had to, I mean, sometimes I travel into the office once a quarter. We have to come up to the office for a meeting. But I don't. Return to the office full-time? No. Temporarily hang up my apron? Yes. How would that impact my lifestyle? I wouldn't be as happy. I would be back in that worker bee mode and not as much joy as I have. But I would be willing to make the sacrifice if my man asked me to, because I do believe that, if he asked me to, he's got a plan to get us out of this situation. But, not to pump up my chest, but when you have positioned yourself with a skill that is in demand, I turn down calls from recruiters all the time for other work from home positions. So I have told, my manager, this job is what I do. It's not who I am. And so I'll just, end that with Kevin often used to talk about these communication degrees, these degrees that a lot of women had that, his words were useless because what are you really doing it with? What are you really doing with that? And Hermisha talked about actually using the degrees that she has for work. So when you make sure that you have a skill that, yes, is beneficial outside the home, but inside the home, I feel like it gives me a little bit more leverage. I'm not going to fool myself because I know I'm becoming, an older woman too. But I wouldn't give it up for too long, but temporarily, yes. All right, interesting question. Were there any other questions, or do we want to close out our? Thank you, Sinji. Sorry, my hashtag, because you won't find Maggie on OnlyFans, but you will find me on OnlyPants. Hashtag OnlyPants. Oh my gosh. Oh goodness. Okay. This has been so much fun, you all. Wait, hold up. We know Mr. Option One would just buy the. That is correct. AV, can I get a ding? Thank you. This has been so much fun. And I know we jest, and we have such a good time here. Thank you for the love, Sydney. We love you guys back. But just to close out, what we like to do here is to give you all our lessons learned, what we've done right and what we've done wrong, and what really resonates with me, especially for our younger ladies. We all are going to age, and we want you to be in a position when you get my age or older. I'm looking forward to the future. And I can't tell you how many women that are my peers that are dreading every Sunday night, that are dreading 10 more years, 20 more years in their situation at work with their toxic boyfriend because they haven't prioritized relationships. I was talking to my man earlier, and we talked about Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart. His wife worked the registers at one of their first stores. We all know about even though it ended in divorce, Jeff Bezos and his wife, Bill and Melinda Gates. Even if the marriage ends, what did Kevin always used to say? He left his relationships better than how he found them. So I just want to encourage you all to prioritize relationships, because as much as you give to these employers, they will never compare to the stability that you can have with a man if you choose wisely. All right, AV, any final thoughts this week?
No, this was one of my favorite episodes. I've been wanting to cover this topic with you all. There's just one other thing that I do want to mention. For those of you guys that are not subscribed to the Kevin Samuels channel, I recommend that you do that this week and absolutely put your notifications on, because there will be a memorial stream in his honor next week. And there's going to be a lot of announcements coming out in the next few days. So giving you guys the inside scoop, but please, highly recommended that you put all notifications on, because you're not going to want to miss this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you all for helping this channel to grow every week. We are here for you and we appreciate it. Lisa, I'm going to come to you.
I just want to say, we're here to help everyone. We want to see everyone have better outcomes and with their relationships. So in the episode we're talking about, Kevin, he said, where are the women to help? Where are the older women? I don't know if he said that exactly, but he said something to that effect in this episode we're talking about. So I'm here. We're here for that. I'm here for that. So we want y'all to come back, share our information. I'm sure you got a friend or know someone that needs this information, because we're going to be here every week and we've got more stuff to go over. So come back and join us and help share the information. So thank you.
Absolutely. And if we didn't get to your question, like Lisa said, we are here for you every week. We encourage you all to come back. Thank you, Sinji, for shouting out the IKEA headboards. But Hermisha, I'm going to come to you. Any final thoughts as we close out?
I would just say that this is an excellent opportunity to get those wife resumes ready, be able to name those skills, be able to know what you bring to the table more than yourself, right? Because men of value and men of any substance, men in general, are looking how you can be a helpmeet. So if you didn't get anything out of today, being able to name your skills so that when you interview, aka dating, you are able to verbalize those things. So, and if you need help with that, book a session.
Absolutely. For anybody who's interested, you can talk to us one-on-one, but we're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode. Usually we stream for you all Friday. Thank you for the flexibility. We had a little bit of a schedule change, so there will not be an episode this Friday, but we will see you all back May the 12th for another episode of the Wives Club. We do have content for you every day. We have shorts. We have some vault episodes where you can see some blasts from the past. So if you're new here, please check out our content. Please engage with us in the comments. We really appreciate it. We are approaching our monetization. We are over 3,100 watch hours. The goal is 4,000. So everything that you watch and you share and you like and you subscribe helps us, and we appreciate it so much. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up tonight, and we will see you all back on the next episode of the Wives Club. Bye.